I don't even have any show notes, so I don't know what I'm looking for. And here we go. 3, 2.
I gotta finish my chips.
Oh, just wouldn't be an episode if I didn't have an interrupted countdown to start.
Eat one piece of jerky. We skipped dinner.
All right, are you ready now?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Waiting on you.
Hello, welcome to Show Boys. My name's Mike. We're here. It's Thursday. It's carrying on the tradition of the duo cast. This time, Nick is here with me. Have a fun episode for you guys tonight. We'll be talking about a really awesome Godzilla movie. But before we do that, we got to shout out our top tier patrons: Joe C, Yusuf H, Tim B. Thank you guys for your support, and all of our other patrons. You guys are awesome, and we appreciate you. We're having a fun little playthrough of a really cool indie game called The Pale Beyond. And we'd love for you to hear our playthrough of it, and we'd love to talk to you about your playthrough of it. So go sign up, patreon.com/showboyspodcast, and get access to that. Yeah, thank you guys. Patreon.com/showboyspodcast. And then one last thing of housekeeping before we get into our review and thoughts on Godzilla Minus One. We are about to head into a fundamental shift of our content, which sounds way scarier and bigger and more important than it actually is. If you've been a fan of Showboys, you probably know in the past we had little bonus series called Companion Series, where we would watch a show as it released, have an episode of the podcast per episode of the show, just reacting and breaking down each episode of the show. That was a little side series that would run alongside our normal Thursday episodes. But as we are growing older and families are getting bigger and free time is escaping us, we decided to shift to like a, I guess you could say, semi-seasonal podcast content where, you know, maybe a lot of podcasts you listen to have seasons. We don't. We just have an episode every Thursday on whatever topic we feel like talking about. But we decided when it fits, we will shift into a seasonal type podcast. So with that being said, Nick, you want to tell everyone what's going to be happening for the next several Thursdays?
Oh yes. So at least for the next 8 Thursdays, I hope, unless Chad and I mess up, we're gonna be covering. This is probably our first CS in some time. I don't know when our last
Probably
CS was.
since the last season of this show. I think.
Okay. So we're doing season 2 of House of the Dragon. We did a full CS on season 1, 2 years ago when that came out. So we really wanted to do that. I don't think there was any way Chad and I would feel right if we did not do all that talking about that show, because it's awesome. So, but like Mike said, it'd be really tricky to cram that in on top of a Thursday episode and like our Pale Beyond episode. So, and we got some stuff coming up in July. Mike is traveling, Dad is traveling. So just to give like an easier summer on everybody.
Yeah. Thursdays
will be overtaken by House of the Dragon Companion Series.
Yeah, and after House of the Dragon's over, we'll probably go back to, you know, our regular, you know,
scheduled
topic.
Programming.
Right, yeah. Until the next thing pops up that could grab our attention like that.
And so, Pokey Boys, you got that going on too at the same time. So
that's right.
There's still stuff out there to watch and do.
Oh yeah. In between, whenever we would have quote unquote seasons, we would, you know, still have our what's watchings, what's playings, reviews of whatever game, specific games or specific shows or specific movies we've been watching, just like we have for the last, has it already been 4 years? Is this year 4? Wow.
August.
That's crazy. Until the middle of August, Thursdays will be House of the Dragons. Hope you guys enjoy that. Nick, you mentioned Pokey Boys in July 5th will be the first episode of season 5. Dun, dun. And some exciting stuff to talk about there. As you may have seen in your Showboys feed, you have seen 4 seasons worth of podcasts for the Pokey Boys, covering our you know, challenge runs and fan game playthrough. But, you know, we're getting ready to start season 5. We thought it would be time to, like, you know, we're maturing now. We're entering that young adult phase of a podcast. Thought, you know, maybe it's time that we move out of our parents' house, try to get our own place, see if we can make it on our own. We're going to be launching the Pokeboys YouTube channel and audio only podcast platforms on starting on Spotify, Apple, and Good Pods. So go search Pokeboys podcast on all those places. Follow us over there. And season 5 will be starting in July, and we have our little interstitial episode that'll be the first episode that releases on the Pokeboys platform. So that's exciting. Go help us out, help us get those channels started. That would be awesome. All right, you ready to talk Godzilla Minus One?
Yeah, so about GMO.
GMO. Oh man, I don't even know where to start. I love this movie. I saw this in theaters, I think only one time.
When you saw it,
Almost
when you saw it in theaters, was it dubbed or subbed?
it was
Or,
subbed.
okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was subbed. Saw it in theater, and then I almost went again with my father-in-law, but he was like, "Subs, yeah, I can't do that. I'm out." So we ended up seeing something else. Loved it, absolutely loved it after seeing it in theaters, and have been anxiously awaiting it to hit digital release in some capacity here in the States. It's been out, over in Japan and whatnot, but randomly, literally out of nowhere, with like no heads up, I just see a tweet out there that says Godzilla Minus One is on Netflix now. And immediately I had to share that with you. And then you watched it. I watched it again. And now we're here because we have to talk about it. So, first off, like initial impressions, what do you think?
I saw that it had like a $15 million budget or something, like something ridiculously affordable, which is even makes this even more impressive. I loved it. It was great. It is definitely a different flavor of movie, I think, than what general audiences are used to. It's not Godzilla Kong smash up franchise. It's not Marvel. It's not Star Wars. Yeah, it's not. It's not your typical summer American blockbuster. They really somehow dialed it back like 50 years and made a Godzilla movie that looks really gorgeous, but like still has this weird, not cheap budget like old movie, but it does have that old
Yeah.
movie
It
vibe.
has the like old Godzilla
Oh
feel,
yeah,
you know?
legit. He's slow. He's like his eyes don't blink. He has no emotion,
Soulless, you know?
soulless, and I was just yeah, I really enjoyed it visually because even just like the way they did just the practical effects and the water look in the opening scene when they're on that like little island and he's like landing the plane, like that was just like cool way to open it. I think everything just looks good. They really somehow struck a really magical match on this one. That's a welcome return, I think.
Yeah. Well, like we're getting a Godzilla movie from like the homeland of Godzilla movies, right?
Yeah.
Like straight from the source. And it really is something. Like it's kind of almost hard to describe. And I was thinking as I was watching it over the last 2 days, because at night on the couch, almost impossible to get through an entire movie without dozing off in my old age. But this movie is it's just a fantastic story of like guilt and regret. It's a very human story starring like a massive nuclear lizard wart, right? That's just like continuing to plague this poor man. Like this is very much the human side of the Godzilla story. And I just think like, man, it crushes what it's trying to convey in the human emotion of what's going on.
Yeah,
Also, absolutely crushes all of the Godzilla stuff. Like everything involving Godzilla is amazing.
yeah, it's pretty insane what they were able to accomplish because yeah, they have this like super. First off, it opens very strong. Like you get to see Godzilla really early on, but it's like a mini Godzilla because he's not that
Yeah.
big yet, which is cool. And they have this entire human story, which is sort of it's really well done, and you're really intrigued by it because the way they weave it back into
Mhm.
Godzilla being this ominous threat to his existential life. Like this dude's like depressed, his PTSD. He does at points in time he doesn't even believe he's alive. It's so bad. really cool that he's like a kamikaze, like quitter, if you will, like kind of shunned at first because he did not do
Yeah.
his duty. He was like, "Yeah, I ain't about to die," but not in a cowardly way. But human stuff aside, but it's very important. Not aside, but like Godzilla isn't also. It's not like the first Godzilla 2014 when they rebooted it in the states, where they focus on the human story, but Godzilla's like just in the background doing stuff. Like Godzilla is very like present enemy of this dude and like in the story, and
Yeah.
the characters like they lock eyes with Godzilla in a sense to where they are fighting Godzilla, and like they don't just deter Godzilla, like their goal is to defeat Godzilla. So it's not even like a background human story,
Right.
or vice versa. Like they are directly
Yeah.
interwoven as like a concise problem. We're gonna beat the problem. We're not just gonna like make it go hibernate or go sleep in the Coliseum or something. Like, we're
Yeah.
gonna take this thing down.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, I know that the original Godzilla films had movies of him fighting other monsters and whatnot, but this is very much a Godzilla versus human. Like
Yeah,
Godzilla is just like angry and blowing stuff up, and it just happens to be a lot of humans.
yeah. I mean, and this is like kind of the first time he's made his appearance in this world. Like, it's kind of new to all of them, other than like people just know of him from like a local island where he was just kind of lurking as a baby or whatever, a
Hmm.
mini Godzilla. But also, he blew up. He got big from some nukes and
Yeah,
stuff.
the
So,
glow
I
up was
mean,
real.
they definitely left it open. Like, spoiler, they defeat him, right, in a very kaiju defeated sense, but they leave it open to do more, which I'm
Yeah.
really intrigued by, without hurting what happens in this movie. That's the great thing, is like at first I was like, dude, this guy's OP. Like he's got a nuke mouth. And like even even American Godzilla, he doesn't have a nuke mouth. He just has like a super laser,
Yeah.
right? Like this dude like spits a
No,
nuke
like
out.
straight up nuclear explosion.
Grant in that scene, like when
It's so
dude,
good.
I was like, what? I have one issue with that scene though. She could have tackled him into the alley. She didn't have to push him and then like leap
Right.
out into the blast. Like,
Yeah.
damn girl.
Dude.
Her complexion was real nice too in the hospital for like getting
Yeah.
sandblasted by concrete and a nuke explosion, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just let that one
It's a
slide. Well, while we're talking about that scene, when I text you, I think it was last night or the night before, that charge up scene that starts on his tail and it's just the glow and the little plates like locking up, single-handedly the greatest like scene of a Godzilla movie.
that looks better than all the American Godzilla
Yeah.
stuff. Like the fact that it's a slow charge up, like he's slow. He's slow,
Yeah.
slow, slow. Like they're able to roll these ships around him and like tie him up kind of thing slow. But like
Mhm.
it makes sense because he's just standing there like, what is happening? And meanwhile they're executing their plan. Or he's charging up. Like
Yeah.
it just all works. Like it's all scaled appropriately to where it makes sense.
I have one scaling thing, and hopefully I remember later on. But yeah, just that first time you see him charge up, and then he just nukes. Get was it Ginza? I think, I don't know. I probably butchered the name of the city, but like, dude, holy crap! Like the coolest looking thing I've seen.
Well, yeah, and it's like these tanks are firing. I'm like, oh, okay, he's just gonna like laser beat because he just let off like a little pop on the boat from like beneath
Hmm.
earlier in the earlier scene. That right after the perfect moment to pause the movie if you're gonna two part it. A timestamp 40 minutes. Just if you're gonna two part this movie, just stop it at 40 minutes
Yep.
and thank me later. You'll enjoy two movies, two episodes.
Yeah. As soon as you see him, like laying in the hospital bed, just
Yep. Just
just
pause.
call it a night.
Be
You know.
like, pause,
Yep.
enjoy what you saw, get ready for the rest. What was I saying? 'Cause he was charging up.
He's gonna. You thought he was gonna just do a
Oh
little
yeah,
laser beam
I
of
thought
the
he was just
tank.
gonna blast those tanks, but like no, he just like no, I'm just gonna want to annihilate everything nearby with the blast from my mouth, and then a nuke explosion in the background. I don't know. I don't think I've like obviously we've seen like footage, actual footage of being in like a nuke explosion fallout zone, but like the way they captured like being kind of ground level in that was intense.
Yeah. Like, this is kind of random, but the physics of that type of explosion, like, obviously you have the burst outward, but then there's like the suction back. Like,
Yeah.
how's that work? Like, what is that?
I think that does happen to a degree because when you see, I don't know if it's them like, I'm trying to think of like nuke explosion footage because like everything blasts this way and like trees come back. I think that's just them standing up. I
Hmm.
don't know if there's like a back pressure that happens from a nuke explosion per se, but I thought that was just like an added thing to like this
Mm.
dude's just dropping such crazy like atomic breath on things.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite scenes, maybe my favorite scene. Also, before we move on, did you watch it subbed or dubbed?
I watched it dubbed. I
Hmm.
determined the dub isn't bad. The way that it's filmed too, like it's not a ton of like close ups and a lot of like mouth watching action like you get in America either. A lot of times the camera is still on a scene, which
Hmm.
gives it a really kind of nice 50 years ago vibe, which I liked. But that also means you don't see their mouths half the time because half the time he's holding his head down or they're turned and like, or a lot of things are set off camera and you're still focused on the main character. So it's really not that bad. I would go either way with it.
So obviously in theater it was
So
subbed, and it really is like that. It's a real treat to watch it subbed
yeah,
because the actors and actresses are just like on fire. Like, it's amazing. Their performances are great. Here at the house, I watched, I think, the entire part one, as we just described, subbed. And then last night, I was like, you know, I don't want to read. I want to like watch what's going on the screen. So I flipped over to the dub, and like you said, it wasn't bad. It's all right.
yeah,
But the original performances are really really good. So if you do rewatch this at some point, I would
yeah.
recommend going subs.
Yeah, because the only problem with the dub is that in some of the longer dialogue scenes, they lose some wind because the performances aren't the same. I could tell
Right.
where it's kind of like just a lot of drawn out talking, important talking, but it doesn't match up perfectly with
Yeah.
obviously the performances.
The original performances are full of emotion. They really put a lot into their performances. It's really great. It's worth a watch for sure. So, in terms of the story of our main character, Shikishima, like, I'm going to probably butcher some of these names. I apologize. I really, really enjoyed the story that we're given here. Like you said, he was a kamikaze pilot that an abandoned ship, so to speak, in the opening of the movie is him returning to, do you remember the name of the island? But it's a small island where they have like a little kind of repair setup for their planes.
Yeah.
So he lands down, and eventually they find out that he basically abandoned the mission. So they're kind of like, disappointed. You've dishonored us, right? You didn't follow through with your mission. And then like teenage Godzilla rolls up on the beach, and our character here is already struggling with the shame of giving up on his mission and how other people are perceiving that. And then he gets like this double whammy when teenage Godzilla comes up. Like the people there are like, go get in your plane. Your gun on your plane is probably the only thing that can do anything to this creature. Like, go get in there and light him up. And he makes it to the plane and then freezes up, like gets stage fright, and doesn't actually do anything. And Godzilla proceeds to basically kill everyone there except for him and one other guy. I believe it was Tachibana.
Hmm.
And to add even another layer of guilt onto that, like on the ship back home, they give him pictures of all of the crew and people who were on the island who were killed. So he has this weight of, one, the shame of not following through with his mission, but two, the guilt of not. I mean, even if he shot the gun at Godzilla, it wasn't going to do anything to him, and he would have died. And probably the same result would have happened.
Exactly.
But he has that guilt, and then to add another layer, he comes home and his home is just absolutely obliterated from air raids and, because World War II. So he's just
Oh, it
struggling.
fits. It fits in your
It
cinematic.
does. This
It's
is
perfect. It's
actually
like the
what
50s.
turned the war for the United States. It was actually Godzilla.
Yeah.
No, but he just like all this grief, all this like regret, guilt, and like you said, he just like like obviously struggles with it, but like it haunts him, right? And to the point where he even wonders if he's actually still alive or if he's like stuck in this nightmare dream, just like recalling all of this stuff. And he sees Godzilla obviously as a big like root cause of those issues. So when Godzilla comes to the mainland, he's like, "Are you serious? We're really doing this again?"
Oh yeah.
And then he does it again, and he thinks that Godzilla kills the girl in his life, who is just some random lady who was basically adopted a parent or
Randomly
an
found a
orphan.
baby, random homeless person who
Yeah,
randomly
Noriko.
adopted, yeah,
Yeah,
a baby, and then he randomly ran
adopted
into
them.
them. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. And also, I always find it interesting when we get different cultural or even like time period behavior. Literal, it was where she was like, "Why didn't you just leave the baby there? And why'd you just sit there with the baby?" It's like, like most people would just ignore it or leave it there. He's like, "I couldn't leave the baby in a place like that." She's like, "You couldn't, could you?" Like realizing that he has a soft spot
Yeah,
for
like
a heart, and immediately takes advantage of him and
yeah.
goes home with him and just starts living in his house, and he can't get rid of them, and she knows this. And it's like, I don't know if that's a Japanese like 40s, 50s culture. It's a practical thing, and other cultures think differently about that. But I
The
also think
40s
about,
version of squatting.
yeah, but I also think about the long-winded version of that like our current society does. Like that happens, but like in such a more elaborate, like dumb way where people pretend it's not happening, but like it's what's happening. So I just think it's interesting where she was just like, "Yeah, you can't, can you? Staying here now." He's like, "You can't stay here." It's like, "Do something about it."
You gonna do kick us out?
That would be really heartless of you
It'd bring great shame on your family.
that you don't have.
Rip. Yeah, so I just feel like it's a good story. Like, if you take the kaiju out of it, it's a good story on its
Mhm.
own.
Oh yeah,
And then you add that this is actually a Godzilla movie, and you're like, what the heck? Like, you guys are shooting way above what your level here. Like, you didn't have to go so hard, but they did. And it was really, really good. And just the way you said earlier, where it's not that happening, but also like Godzilla's happening, it's like Godzilla is the root of what's happening on the
yeah.
human side. And they're very much intertwined, and the cause and effect of each other.
Neither are background characters. Like that's the
No.
nice thing. Like everything is an important piece to it
Yeah.
versus you know some American Hollywood stuff where it's kind of like, we got to have these certain things. We're not going to write really well about all of it, so or any of it. This is
Or any of
background
it.
stuff. This is foreground stuff.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
wash.
We got to go real big on the King Kong dentist scene. Okay.
Whew, yeah.
But no, yeah, man, I love the way that they're so tied together and that it's very much mankind versus Godzilla. And like there's an actual conflict and a resolution to the conflict, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's not, they didn't like 2 or 3 part us. I think we got like 4 parted when it came to Godzilla. Like you got teenage Godzilla on the
Mhm.
island in basically the epilogue or the prologue of the movie. We get the boat fight when they're out there scrapping for mines when they first find them.
Yeah, where
Then
he's
you have
just like swimming behind the boat with his head
yeah,
up in his huge, like crazy fin things, dude. So
eyes.
So awesome.
It's
Soulless eyes.
Very Jaws-like, Jaws
Yeah.
vibe going on
Yeah.
in that scene, and then you hit your 40-minute mark where you pause, we wake up in the hospital, get a ton of exposition with, like, more of our boat characters, which are all great characters. I love the
Yeah.
boat crew. All of them are awesome. You kinda got your captain, who's just kinda like a little bit of a sea dog, savvy sailor. You got your, like, scientist guy who's
Mhm.
smart, then you got, like, the young kid who's just trying to be helpful, but anyway, and we get like Godzilla like 2 or 3 more times because then he attacks a smaller city outside of Tokyo and nukes it. That's where,
That was the Geens
yeah.
attack.
And then the last fight. So it's a four times we get to see him.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is pretty nice.
Yeah, and I really liked how they kind of, like, explained things,
Oh yeah.
like, you get a lot of reports from the United States of this creature, and I even loved how they kept referencing, like, "Oh, yeah, the United States, they said they can't help because it'll just escalate tensions with Russia," and I was like, "Yeah, it probably would've." I mean, that could fit right into that docuseries I just watched.
Yeah. Which I thought was great too, because maybe that's the benefit of watching like a foreign made film is like United States and like another superpower, just like these reference pieces that
Mhm.
you know everything about, but they're like, well, yeah, we legit are just kind of on our own. We're gonna kind of handle this in a
Yeah.
um. So that was cool.
Yeah. Okay, so the scale issue I had, I
Mhm.
feel like I have to talk about it now because we're kind of teetering at that point. I was going to talk about the parts of Godzilla in the water that we got. Obviously we have the first encounter with the small wooden boat, but then there's also another encounter where he's attacking like this big like destroyer or like warship or whatever. And that got me to thinking in the water and like the plan that the smart like scientist, they called him Doc on the boat crew,
Mhm.
the plan that he comes up with toward in the final act of the movie to deal with Godzilla.
It's awesome.
Super cool plan because they notice like obviously none of their weapons are doing anything to Godzilla except for making him mad. And when they did like do any damage to him, he just regenerated very quickly. And
Dude.
then like it like looks different the rest of the movie, like
Yeah.
that spot, which is really cool. So he comes up with this plan, which is actually pretty cool. Basically, tie up Godzilla and like, you know, I forget what the gas is. What's the gas that they use? But
It's
Freon releases the bubbles, makes Godzilla sink all the way to the
no
ocean
longer,
floor.
which so he no longer has the physical connection to like the water, which
Yeah.
got me thinking is like that kind of explained how he stands in the middle of the ocean is like he is really good at treading water or something like
Mhm.
there's some sort of Godzilla physic that has never been like very well explained, but I liked that they at least explained, hey, if we just put a bunch of bubbles around him, he'll sink. We're not admitting he's standing up.
That's what I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
because where they sink him, he stands. He's literally walking as they're tying him up. And then
Is he
they
walking?
execute their plan.
No, he's somehow treading water. He's not moving,
Apparently,
but he's not moving when he's being encircled by the boats.
he's standing up.
He's standing up, but he's just kind of looking around. He has some sort of means to tread water. I don't know how yet, but at least we know that if you put air around him, he will sink in
Yeah.
the water. So if you remove the water, he sinks. Somehow he's able to tread water. He's ultra slow everywhere else, but he can really paddle those little stubby legs.
Oh, just imagining like that would be my one gripe with this movie is his movement. We'll pause on the whole treading water thing because I still want to talk about that for sure. But my one gripe is definitely how he walks and how like very robotic and unnatural it is. Like it's just like man, the best way I can describe it is a toddler pretending like they're a dinosaur walking in slow motion. Like you get like one big exaggerated stomp, pause. Another big
Yeah.
exaggerated stomp, pause. another big exaggerated stomp pause. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, Godzilla looks so cool except for his eyes. Then he's doing like this really lame walk, and it's a little disappointing.
Yeah,
And
but
his eyes, like his eyes just look
yeah,
like people eyes that never blink and just stare dead straight ahead. And I'm just like,
the eyes and
those two
all of the
things.
like leg shots are,
Yeah.
definitely the hard parts. But it's a nod back to like classical Godzilla.
Yeah.
But he can swing that tail super fast and just like whip
Yeah.
everything around.
Just not
So
the
like
legs.
no, okay, so Reddit obviously the post is the in canon explanation for why Godzilla can stand the ocean.
Mhm.
And it's just a picture of him with really long legs, so they're being funny. But in it, people are saying in Godzilla Minus One, they do briefly show it. This person says they briefly show it in Minus One, where he is treading water, but it's very briefly because it looks silly because he's just moving his feet back. He's just able to tread water, and someone's like, that's why his thighs are so chunky. But I mean, other people suggest that he's just like very buoyant too, with those maybe chunky legs. So maybe his tail's doing some work there. So he treads
Yeah.
water somehow very efficiently for a what the docs say, like 23,000 tons or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Insane. But I did like that in that explanation they were kind of using some science to say,
Yeah.
we could sink this dude. So I thought that was all
It
cool.
seemed like a very Japanese solution to this problem. Like,
Science?
if this was like America, they'd just be like, we need bigger bombs.
Yeah.
How many huge bombs could we drop on this thing at one time? That will do the trick.
Yeah.
And no, they're like, let's use our brains here.
Yeah. Even though, Dragon Ball Z, they just go bigger bombs in Dragon Ball Z. That's why Americans like it. They're like, more energy, bigger bomb. And then he kind of did the cell thing where he regenerates later.
Yeah.
But yeah, they took a science approach to it. Like, okay, we sink him. What does that mean? Well, it should kill him, but if it doesn't, we'll just then rapidly rise him to the surface.
Yeah.
And the pressurization should kill him back, which was cool because, again, like you said, his skin changed because he was like damaged. Like he was really pissed off.
He's getting all those little white bubbly
Yeah.
things. Yeah, the plan was so cool. And then seeing it executed was really cool too, because he was like, wasn't he in the middle of charging up when they start the sink? And when he like sinks and they get all the way down, he just like freezes and the blue goes away.
Yeah.
And you're like, woohoo. But then he starts pulling on the line, starts dragging the ship. And so they release the rafts, and you see that again, also really cool. You see all those like spots starting to form on his skin. And yeah, man, it was a really cool plan. Didn't work, but it was really cool.
Yeah. And I like that they didn't really show him much under the water doing what he was doing, because it gave it, again, that Jaws thing where, we're humans. We're on the surface. This is from our perspective. We don't really ever get that Godzilla point of view, which is fine. We have movies that give us the Godzilla point of view of things.
That's cool.
Well, Godzilla likes to nap too, apparently.
Sure.
Right in the Coliseum, right in the middle of Rome. Anyway, -1.
Yeah.
Why is it -1?
Glad you asked. Do you know why it's called -1?
I was thinking because they kind of kill him. I don't know.
So this takes place right after World War II.
Yeah.
What happened in World War II to Japan?
We nuked them.
We did twice. So they were like at zero, could not get any lower. But then Godzilla comes and takes them just one notch lower than zero.
Really?
Godzilla is their -1.
Oh. Kind of like, is it a soccer thing where it's like just a low score?
It's like
or can you go negative in?
All I can think of is the Spinal Tap reference, like turn it up to 11. Well,
Okay.
Japan was turned to 0, and then
And
Godzilla
then-
like turned them down so low that the volume went to negative.
Hey, there are hardy people, that's for sure. Like you said, we would just try to throw bigger bombs at them and kill ourselves in the process, and we'd be like, yeah, man, we tried.
Yeah, hey, you just go Godzilla go boom. No, I think the name is super cool, and I didn't think of that on my own. I looked it up after I saw it in theater and thought it was really neat. But yeah, I mean, the plan to take on Godzilla was amazing. Obviously, didn't work. And we got a really cool redemption arc with our main character here. He ends up requesting a plane so he could lure Godzilla back into the ocean if he were to get out before they could, execute their plan. And they're like, okay, we got these new fighter jets that we didn't get a chance to deploy in the war. They've been sitting here for several years, so they're not actually functional. So we'll have to find somebody to make them functional. And he's like, I know just the guy.
Wrote a bunch of like letters that would piss him off.
That was amazing because it's the only thing that, like the movie in all of the parts that obviously are hard to grasp, like you're gonna write this dude and he's just gonna willingly come and fix this plane for
Right.
you when he clearly does not enjoy you for
Yeah.
what happened. But instead of like Tachibana just being like, you know what, I got to do this out of the goodness of my heart. It's like, no, they made the character write a bunch of letters blaming him for all the deaths on the island. So
No,
he had to find him to beat him up.
yeah, but that would only work in Japanese culture as an honor thing. Whereas in America, they would just be like, okay, still not going to come see you.
Yeah, talk to their therapist or something about it.
That's very dishonorable. I must come at least beat you up, if not
Yeah.
kill you.
But somehow he ends up talking him into, not somehow. He's like, I need you to do this because we can take down Godzilla, our common enemy.
But I need you to do some little extra things that no one else knows about, which I thought was a really cool like a way he approached all that. He wanted him
Yeah.
to put the bombs in there.
Hmm.
Now, they could have saved themselves and made it a little bit more of like a surprise when they had the like, ejection seat installed. So like they did three things to hint at that, which I got it on the first one, and like then they did like two more hints, and I'm like, why did they do that? Like it would have been a better surprise because like what was the first thing? There was a conversation. Oh, okay. The conversation that they had about, how they have not been treated right, you know, by as a people, right? Like their fighters didn't have ejection seats in the war. So like to me, that right there was the like foreshadowing that we're gonna get an ejection seat and he's not gonna have to kill himself, right?
Yeah.
But then you got dude like rubbing the seat and like thinking at it. And I'm like, oh yeah, naturally, he's gonna install an ejection seat. And then when he finally gets there and sits in the plane, he's
Yeah.
showing him everything. He's like, oh, and this other thing I need to show
He's
you. And then
like,
they
I've
cut.
got one more thing.
It's like, yes, we know there's an ejection seat.
I enjoyed the little speech on
Yeah.
how the Army and Air Force and Navy were treated during the war and stuff. I thought was pretty neat. But yeah, so that redemption arc where the plan is clearly failing, Godzilla's back in the surface, he's getting ready to charge up. Like that scene where he's charging up and everyone is realizing, like, well, this is the end, boys.
Mild
that was
issue there is like
that was
he
great.
was full bore, like about to fire. Then they
Mhm.
do the plane thing where all of a sudden he's not, and then he's flying. I get that, they just
Yeah.
kind of dialed it back a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that same thing where like the plane thing should have been happening where when he's like halfway to like three-fourths charged up. But I love that scene though where it's like everything's kind of like basically stopped, super slow, and everyone's like, oh, we're about to literally be toast.
And I like that he let one off earlier and killed the decoy ship
Mhm.
and caused the huge
Yeah,
waves. Like that
very
was really
cool.
cool. Very threatening. Like it just shows that like, you know, you are one move away from just getting like taken out. Still, like,
Yeah.
obviously the goal is to try to take this thing down, but it is still super dangerous. And by no mean they were degrading Godzilla's threat. Big dumb monster, middle of the ocean. We can tie him up. He's not going to be like, which one do I go for? Um, oh, the
Yeah.
plane's back. He's got really bad ADD like that. Like he was just kind of casually walking through the mountains, and this plane comes by and it's just like spitting at him. He's like, so I want
Yeah.
to follow you all the way into the ocean. That was very
Uh yeah. But man, when he just like flies straight into his mouth. Like that sound, and like again, I just love the abrupt stopping of everything.
Like, I don't know. Maybe there's some scaling issue there because I was picturing like Godzilla's mouth would be bigger and the plane would like go in. It
Like
kind of just
lay
like
in.
yeah, it just kind of like wedged itself in like the front of his mouth. I was
You
picturing
know,
like
like like when you eat those popsicles that are just in like the plastic tube.
yeah,
Godzilla just got like popsicle tubed there.
yeah.
Came out looking like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Boom.
Oh, dude, my children had their first like Joker moment with those popsicles like yesterday.
Oh,
My one daughter was like, "Ah, oh, cut my lip." I'm like, welcome to my world. It'll be the first of many, kid." Oh man. But yeah, and flies the plane in, obviously ejects out of the plane and basically blows Godzilla's face off, and that kills him. I wasn't like a huge fan of the. I mean, I guess that blue nuclear energy had to go somewhere because he was charged up. But
yeah.
like, just yeah, I'm never a fan of the whole like light coming out of bodies as people or things are dying and then they crumble. But yeah, what would you think there of the conflict resolution?
Yeah, obviously it was cool that he got his head blown off and then he just kind of deteriorated. The light thing, not a huge fan of it. It wasn't needed, but luckily it didn't completely blind everything. It just kind of seeped out of him as his body fell into chunks. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool the way he just kind of turned into a pile
Mm.
of. So yeah, I thought that all made sense enough as a Godzilla movie needs to say we defeated him because it makes sense. I mean, he's all charged up, he's ready to go, gets his head blown off, which is the apparatus which the energy
This?
releases. It makes sense that it would just kind of destroy his body from there because he
Yeah.
wasn't able to release it. So
So Godzilla's head's blown off. He falls into nasty nuclear lizard chunks into the ocean. And I thought it was really cool. The whole ending sequence there. Shikishima's neighbor, who effectively is the aunt of the child, so to speak,
she came around.
she gets a note and then meets him on the docks as he comes back from heroically blowing up Godzilla's head. Hands him the telegram, and we find out that Noriko, she's actually alive in the hospital, somehow survived in point blank nuclear
No, it
explosion.
was just the fallout blast area that blew away all the buildings except the like two that created the alley which he was in.
Only launched her probably several hundred feet through the air at very high speeds,
Along with everything else that was in the air,
at least impaled by something. Yeah.
the
Suspend.
odds.
But yeah, she's there. She's alive. They reunite because, they both had feelings for each other, but couldn't tell each other. And now,
Because his war.
yeah, but now it is. So yeah, add that as like the seventh layer of regret and and guilt of our poor main character was never
Yeah.
telling her how he felt. I literally
I've
have no
never
idea.
seen anything like that in a Godzilla movie.
Same.
Granted, I haven't seen all the Godzilla movies, but like I've never seen a human be infected by Godzilla nuclear radioactive materials
What
like Mike
what was
just
the
did.
term you said?
Radioactive material. Let's just go with that. Somehow attached itself to her because they did say like as he fights and as he gets shot, like he was losing parts of his body all
Hmm.
over the place. So I don't know if like she got hit with it or she's like radioactive or she's just dying from like cancer.
Okay. The reason I didn't hear what you said is because I was googling really quick because uh, I
I
was
know.
neglecting my podcasting host duties and did not Google this before we started. But the director confirmed that what is in Noriko's neck are G cells. And G cells have a brief history in the Godzilla franchise and were utilized to create the Godzilla rivals Biolante and Space Godzilla. So, where that goes, I have no idea.
I
But
definitely feel like a sequel will happen.
we were talking about Noriko and her state in the hospital, right?
She's fine.
Um, if she has G cells in her body now, like we saw how Godzilla could regenerate after
That's how she looks so good.
maybe, you know, adding the G cells to your skincare routine may be beneficial.
You think she did it like nefariously? She just found some like Godzilla goo and was just like, "There we go, cheeks fixed."
Yeah, as she's like laying there impaled. So if you like, I don't know, what do you think?
No, I definitely feel like we need a sequel because it was so good and so well done. Double the budget would go a long way. We're talking $30 million. If the original budget was 15 million, just double, triple the budget, keep it like 50 million. We'd have a really good little franchise here. And I would love a Godzilla franchise from them. I want both Godzilla franchises. I want the Kong Godzilla Inner Earth thing, and I want these like retro ones. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan how the American Godzillas do the bad guys, like the
Mhm.
bad kaiju.
Yeah.
Mecha Godzilla and like this would be like really awesome.
Yeah, basically the theory that I just read was that a piece of Godzilla got in or merged with Noriko. And they do hint at it in the one scene after the Ginza attack where the scientists are
Yeah,
scanning the radioactivity of the area. They say little pieces of Godzilla's flesh fell off. So there's things that could have
yeah.
gotten into Noriko.
Speaking of Noriko and that whole first contact of the mainland, convenient that Godzilla was just kind of stomping through town, picks up the one train she was on. She was the only person in the train that was holding on, and yada, yada, yada. More surprising to me is she's running through the streets with thousands of people. And who does she happen to run into? Her boy. Like
Right?
that dude knew where
I was about to say,
um,
what's that iPhone app?
like
Are you-
find my friends.
yeah, suspend disbelief, Nick. It's a movie. But yeah, so I still don't know like what that turns into. Like, are we gonna have like a a human Godzilla hybrid? I don't know. Maybe it's just showing like if it can infect Noriko, then it can infect other like biological forms,
Mm-hmm.
and it infects some
Yeah.
other wildlife or something, and we have another kaiju born or something. As far as sequels go, I mean, that would be pretty cool. There's another Godzilla movie in this same vein called Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla 2016 that is beloved by, you know, this group of fans. So that will definitely be on my watch list coming soon, hopefully. I'm not sure where you can stream it, but by all accounts, I heard that Shin Godzilla is amazing. And if you like Minus One, you probably will love Shin Godzilla. With that being said, I don't know where do we go from here, Nick? Is there anything left to talk about?
I just keep reading more Reddit comments on how he like stands in the ocean. And someone said that there's a shot where he's in the ocean and his tail's going straight down, and that would give him the buoyancy needed to float.
This is
And
random.
then this one they say buoyancy because gators also swim upright with their tails.
That is true. Have you ever seen a gator like his head flat on the water, but
Right.
if you're at the zoo or whatever and you look and his body is just straight down like
Yeah.
this. It's so goofy looking. I love it.
Makes sense.
What is there's a research ship.
Oh my god.
I don't even know how to Google this, but I literally just saw something on it the other day. But it's like this really big
Oh yeah,
ship
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
that
yeah.
will like
I know what
submerge
you're talking about.
itself and float like straight
Yeah.
up and down like this. That's what I'm talking about. Research platform Flip, the only vessel in the world capable of shifting from horizontal to vertical position in the middle of the ocean. It is 355 feet long and weighs 700 tons.
with the water in it.
That I do not know.
There's probably some reasoning for that too.
No. But yeah, so interesting.
Awesome.
I still, I don't know. The buoyancy thing still feels weird to me because I'd have to go back and rewatch the scenes in the water where he's not swimming, like a
Yeah.
croc or something. Because I still feel like you have that rigid
Well-
step
But then
thing.
also like he's thoroughly standing out. Like that's the thing, is like it's almost like hip level. Like
Yeah.
you can see his legs kind of like
His tail is very buoyant. Yeah.
suspend belief, Mike.
I know, but ever since you mentioned it, I can't not think about it every time now.
Yeah.
And then literally gets sunk to the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? This doesn't make sense to me. I can't enjoy this now. Thanks, Nick.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you finally were able to watch this though. It was very good in theater. And then so it was like a very short window at first. I think maybe like 30 or 60 days, and well, I think it was a 30-day release, but then it was doing so well that they kept extending it. And then after a while of extending it, they released a black and white version in theaters, which probably would have been pretty cool.
So Godzilla Minus One sets historic first time ever record with simultaneous success on streaming and video on demand. So first movie in history to be number one on Netflix and iTunes simultaneously, which means people buying it and they're watching it. So yeah, $15 million budget.
Yeah. And until it came out, it was one of the higher pirated movies because people really wanted to watch this movie. And I think it was very successful at the box office because they kept extending, they kept it in theaters way past their original window that they wanted to have it in theaters. So I'm glad. I feel like they deserve it. They made a really awesome movie. Godzilla, man, just looks so stinking cool. Whatever those fin spine thingies are. I love it. And it fits perfectly. Obviously this was a timed thing. Godzilla's been kind of a big thing in pop culture in the recent months. You could say probably all year. Because when did Godzilla and Kong come out?
March?
Was there one even before that?
This came out before that.
Oh, that's right. We have to give our rating and recommendation, which
I really love this movie.
This does not get a negative score. This is no -1 rating here. I would give this solid 9. I can't say 10 because I still have the water issue, which will exist forever in every Godzilla movie I watch from now on.
Yeah.
But just the rigid movement, can we have just not an animatronic? It's CGI. You could pull off the slow lumbering giant idiot lizard without making him take one step every 2 minutes and not have soulless eyes. It's really the soulless eyes. That's what absolutely kills me.
And I think he just needs to blink or have a little bit more eyelid action. But if he moved his eyes, it would look worse. You know what I mean? Like a plane flies by, his body doesn't move, but his eyeballs just look over to the right.
Yes. I also love how they don't look like lizard eyes. They just look like human eyes. They're hazel colored.
A little bit of purple in them.
Yeah.
Clearly, he can only look where his head turns. I would give it a 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
It's a really good movie. I'll probably give it a 9 when I watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Go watch. I mean, again, I don't know why I say this at the end, but if you watch this entire episode and haven't seen Godzilla Minus One, you have issues, but also you should go watch this movie. Great movie. I really, really loved it. And now it's available for all you Netflix subscribers, so have fun. But yeah, so this is my final time on Showboys until the end of August. So I just had to do pause so it could be cut and not look like it was in the middle of a sentence. So you could clip that and just send it out. But no, handing the keys over to you and Chad. You guys have fun with your House of the Dragon season 2 companion
Enjoy your
series.
summer.
I will. I will be back up in Ohio soon.
Yeah.
So we'll have to hang out and record something. With that being said, please subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think of Godzilla Minus One? Head over to the Pokeboys YouTube channel, Pokeboys Podcast. Subscribe over there. And we'll see you later. Bye.
That's all you get, Dad. You don't get any dialogue.